For the longest time, this was a topic that was completely off limits in medical research. But now, scientists are reopening the book on something pretty controversial, using psychedelic drugs like LSD and psilocybin to treat core features of autism spectrum disorder. There's this huge new wave of interest, and it's being driven by some really compelling personal stories, and maybe more importantly, a much more rigorous way of doing science. Okay, let's get into it. So this is really the heart of the matter, isn't it? We're not just talking about treating things that can co-occur with autism, like depression. The real question is, could these substances actually help with the fundamental social challenges that can be part of the autistic experience? It's a massive question, and it comes with a really complex history and a very cautious path forward. And this number? This is a huge reason why this whole conversation is back on the table. In a recent online survey of autistic adults who'd used psychedelics on their own, a staggering 78% of them said they felt a drop in their social anxiety. I mean, a number like that, it's just hard to ignore, and it really shows you why researchers are taking a serious second look. So let's dig into the initial evidence that's got everyone so interested. What are people actually saying about their experiences, and how does that square with what scientists think might be happening in the brain? And what's really wild here is that the benefits people reported go way beyond just social anxiety. Get this, over 80% felt less psychological distress overall. 70% felt more engaged with other people, and many also talked about having more psychological flexibility, which is basically the ability to handle tough thoughts and feelings without getting stuck. I mean, these are not small changes. They point to a really profound shift in well-being and connection. But, and this is a huge but, it is not all good news, not by a long shot. That same survey found that about 1 in 5 people had a bad experience. Some actually reported more anxiety. A few even said it was one of the worst experiences of their entire lives. So this makes one thing crystal clear. This is not some kind of magic bullet, and the risks are absolutely real. And to really get a handle on those risks, we have to look back, because this isn't the first time science has gone down this road. The first wave of research happened more than 60 years ago, and, well, it came with some very, very serious ethical problems. Yeah, this early work was a mess, ethically speaking. Starting back in 1961, researchers were giving LSD to children, many of whom were in institutions and were in no position to consent. The studies themselves were sloppy, the methods were all over the place, and the side effects could be truly severe. We're talking panic states and, in at least one case, seizures. It's really no surprise that by the 1970s, the whole thing got shut down. And this chart really lays out the double-edged sword they found. On one side, you have these incredible reports of better moods and kids actually seeking out social connection for the first time. But on the other, you have this absolutely terrifying list of side effects: severe anxiety, aggression, even psychotic states. The data from these old trials shows both the tantalizing promise and the profound peril. And that really brings us to how scientists see it today. This quote from researchers at McGill pretty much sums it up. We can learn things from the past, for sure, but that history is a massive warning sign. The potential for harm is huge, and it means we have to be extremely cautious moving forward. Okay, so why is it so risky? To get that, we have to go down to the biological level, right down to the wiring of the brain itself. See, there's a huge potential challenge here. The autistic brain can be different in the exact systems that psychedelics target, and that could create a major mismatch between the drug and the brain's unique setup. So, the big idea here is something called neuroplasticity. You've probably heard of it. It's basically the brain's incredible ability to rewire itself, to form new connections, and to learn new things. The main theory is that psychedelics work by kicking the brain into a state of hyperneuroplasticity, essentially prying open a window of opportunity for change. So here's the simplified version of how it's supposed to work. First, the drug, say psilocybin, latches onto these specific serotonin receptors called 5-HT2A. This sets off a chain reaction, which includes firing up a key pathway called mTOR. You can think of mTOR as kind of like a master switch for building new connections in the brain. The end result is the state of high plasticity, almost like a software update for your brain that could allow for new kinds of social learning to happen. But here is the massive catch. Research suggests that in some autistic individuals, these very systems are already different from the get-go. there might be reduced binding at those key serotonin receptors, and that MTR signaling pathway could already be hyperactive. It leads to this huge question. If the brain's hardware is just built differently, what happens when you try to run this powerful software? Does it even install correctly, or does it just crash the whole system? And that's where modern science is trying to step in, very, very carefully. Researchers today are trying to find a new way forward, one that takes the promise from all those personal stories, but combines it with a deep understanding of the risks and the brain science. And a huge first step on that path is happening literally right now. At Toronto's Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, or CAM, they are running the very first clinical trial of psilocybin specifically for autistic adults. This is not a repeat of the past. It is a completely different ballgame, designed from the ground up for safety and scientific rigor. I mean, just look at this comparison. It is night and day, right? In the 60s, they used kids who couldn't consent. Today, it's consenting adults. Back then, oversight was informal, to be generous. Today, you've got ethics boards, Health Canada, and FDA guidance. The method has gone from just giving people varied doses to a super structured protocol with brain imaging, therapy built in, and precise doses. And maybe the most important thing of all is the goal is shifted from trying to modify autistic behavior to simply assessing safety and helping with co-occurring depression. And you can see how seriously they're taking safety when you look at who they won't allow in the trial. The screening process is incredibly strict. For example, anyone with a history of seizures, active suicidal thoughts, or a personal or even close family history of psychosis is automatically excluded. This isn't about giving this drug to just anyone who wants to try it. It's about being incredibly careful to select participants where the potential benefits might just outweigh the known risks, all inside a highly controlled environment. Which brings us right back to where we started, to this central tension. On one hand, you have these compelling personal stories of social breakthroughs. And on the other, you have a history of dangerous side effects and some real brain science that suggests there could be a fundamental mismatch. This new wave of research is all about caution. But the big question is still out there. Is this a careful path forward to a genuinely new kind of therapy, or will the risks just prove to be too great? A dead end? We're definitely going to be watching very closely to see what the data shows.